Hi, everyone. My name is Naomi Gilia, and I am the Senior Manager of Field Marketing here at Lucidworks. Thanks for joining today's webinar, Smart Answers for Employee and Customer Support After COVID-19. In today's webcast, our speakers will be diving into Smart Answers, the technology that helps businesses serve their customers and employees by giving them fast answers to their product and support questions. Before we get started, I want to go over some housekeeping. Please make sure your volume is turned up to hear the audio from today's presentation. We'd also love to hear from you during the webinar, so if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box. We'll have time at the end of the session to answer the questions that come in. And be sure to check out the resources box for links to learn more about Smart Answers on Lucidworks Fusion. Lastly, today's presentation will be recorded, and the slides and recording will be sent to you after the webinar. Today's presenters are Radu Miklaus, Director of Product, AI, and Cloud at Lucidworks, and Stephen Myrup, Senior Solutions Engineer. Thanks to you both for joining us today. I'll now pass it over to Radu to kick off the intro to Smart Answers. Take it away, Radu.
Thank you, Naomi. Great to be with everybody today. Super excited about the topic. Conversational frameworks in general are coming into their own due to efforts in digital transformation and also an accelerated concept that's happening globally, which I think everybody's aware of, which is COVID-19. And this is changing in many ways the way we work, the way we interact, and the way we consume information. What we will talk to today is the current challenges and opportunities, some of the use cases for and benefits for conversational frameworks, what Lucidworks does in terms of offering solutions for that via Smart Answers, and then finally we will go through a demo that exemplifies a customer care use case. So if we were to actually look at the current situation, the acceleration of the frameworks is happening throughout the enterprise across the board. According to Gartner surveys years over year, in 2019, we've seen a 50% increase in CIOs reporting that they're dealing with deployment of short-term or immediate conversational platforms. And that's up from 21% in 2018. Conversation frameworks and platforms are designed to enhance self-service and self-solving for customers. In order to do that, we need to get a much closer look to what AI can do to enable users to interact naturally with knowledge bases. Naturally means asking questions in many different ways, but making sure that they get the same answers and the same information back as it may be curated by companies. By 2025, there's an expectation that AI will be prevalent into the enterprise. And that basically allows us to zero in into the way search can be affected. And in many ways, the current traditional way of doing search, which may be keyword, can be enhanced with deep learning methods to enable companies to automate that interaction with customers through the natural way of asking questions, understand context of the incoming queries, and then deliver relevant answers back. This automation is not only intended to maintain a high level of customer experience, but also enhance operational efficiency through cost control. So let's talk a little bit about the current situation with COVID-19, and this has in many ways forced the business to adapt with far-reaching implications. It has increased the need for robust technologies that allow us to connect, research, innovate, consume, and be productive, even though we're physically distancing from each other. The way companies are curating and presenting information to their stakeholders is changing very rapidly. Remote workforce, isolated consumers are driving an increase in the volume of digital information, discovery and retrieval, and that is brings with it the need to automate more with the use of intelligence. So in many ways, when people think about conversational frameworks, they think about chatbots and virtual assistants. And in many ways, that's where the opportunity really starts with smart answers. If we think about chatbots and virtual assistants, there has been a tremendous amount of progress in the ability for these frameworks to understand natural language and also generate natural language. So the focus for AI applications have been in that realm. However, contextual understanding and relevancy are remaining a next big opportunity. In many ways, chatbots tend to be driven by business rules. And when it comes to domain knowledge, the permutation of the business rules can get very complex, depending on, again, the width of the knowledge that needs to be presented, the processes. These systems can be complex to design. They can be complex to integrate and to scale. And inadvertently, there's a lot of examples out there of interactions that, in the chatbot world, for example, where they do a tremendous job of transcribing what we are asking for, but but sometimes they return irrelevant information that can leave the user with a frustrated experience. So that actually brings us to what Lucidworks offers in terms of addressing this particular problem. Smart Answers for Lucidworks Fusion is an advanced deep learning add-on for chatbots and virtual assistants. And the way they can enhance these frameworks is through immediate contextual answers to natural language questions. It can improve self-service when it comes to customer support or agent efficiency. It can enable employee self-service. And in many ways, it gets us away from the static and cumbersome process of going and searching for information through FAQ drill downs that may be available through knowledge bases. So let's talk a little bit about some of the use cases that we're seeing out there from our customers. In terms of customer support, obviously call centers are one of the big investments that companies are doing to make sure that customers get their information and the treatment as they need it. And in many ways, agent efficiency is of utmost importance while keeping the customer satisfaction up. When it comes to self-service portals, when customers are actually coming inbound and doing research on whether websites or even mobile applications, making chatbots available with intelligent question and answer systems makes it for a more interactive and a high resolution rate for their questions. And finally, being able to manage, deflect, triage, and prioritize these incoming queries allows teams for customer support to focus really on the harder problem. So let's talk a little bit about the consumer. And this is actually an area that I think pretty much 100% of the audience here is very familiar with. And I think each one of us has had really good experiences on websites and mobile applications in terms of research and browse, but also may remember bad experiences where the information wasn't readily available. So if, in our experience with our customers, and we're working with a lot of customers that are external facing and building applications for their customers on their sites, we're seeing self-service answers at point of sales driving, in general, engagement a lot more with the websites. And that engagement can drive higher click-through rates, more add to carts, and by the end, obviously, more purchase. And shopper satisfaction is directly proportional with average order value increases and also return visits. Employee help desk and self-service. If I was to talk about myself before the COVID pandemic, I was actually going into the office, and now I find myself as a remote worker, along with millions of other workers that actually are in need for information and information retrieval. And during this time, obviously, companies are indeed in situations where it's even more critical to share information from their knowledge bases, whether that information is curated via FAQs or question and answers or just documents. And this is where Smart Answers can help tremendously. And from a standpoint of personalized answers, especially in an era where digital transformation is full swing in a lot of companies, what you're starting to see more and more is that new technologies are brought online by companies, and with that, an increase in the help desk questions that are coming from their workers. And being able to automate with intelligence that layer of serving your internal employees will drive their satisfaction and their productivity much higher. So I will spend a few minutes in talking a little bit about what Smart Answer does and where it fits into the landscape of conversational frameworks. This is very important because Smart Answers is not a chatbot or a virtual assistant. On the contrary, it's actually a backend, a scalable, intelligent, AI-powered backend that allows us to enhance chatbot and virtual assistants. So if I was to look at this flow from left to right, user input can happen many different ways. It can happen through typed questions, through a search box, but now more and more you're seeing very complex voice-to-text services that allows users to put in, to dictate into their phone or into their microphone, their computer through a chatbot framework and get answers back. And this is where the Fusion Smart Answers backend comes into play. As these queries get in, they get interpreted by Smart Answers. They get pushed to the knowledge base that is available for automation. The relevant answer gets picked up and then sent through the same exact route back to the user in the context that they asked for the question, whether it's typed or spoken. So this is kind of the flow that we're actually enabling our customers to build very robust and intelligent experiences for question and answer systems for their users. So let's talk a little bit about the differentiators. Robust machine learning and deep learning are a must in these environments because, as I mentioned earlier, keyword search is not enough to actually be able to drill into the content and the intent of the user. We're bringing to bear very sophisticated semantic search that allows you to take in the information represented as vectors, whether it's the question or the answer, and then at query time be able to match with very high accuracy the semantic meaning between a question and an answer. We also bring to bear scalable enterprise search. Fusion traditionally has been designed around the concept of indexing and querying pipelines, which are the processes of designing how you intake data and how you configure the treatment of that data when a query comes in. And in many ways, that's an accelerator to folks that are building these types of applications because they, in many ways, limit the long-term burden of managing and scaling a backend like this. Pluggable API framework. Fusion is actually an API-first platform, which allows us to implement the backend and integrate it with any type of chatbot or virtual assistant or search capability that is API friendly. And finally, one of the main tenets of Fusion is a very powerful UI that allows users to interact with it in a low-code fashion. It's a UI that allows non-data scientists to produce their own models and then to deploy them into the query pipelines that they would like to surface to their users. I will spend a couple minutes here just to talk a little bit about the high-level flow that's happening underneath on the Fusion side. And I would break it down into three different buckets: model training, model publishing, and then model serving. On the left-hand side, what you're going to see is the ability for users to do offline training and develop a model for this type of generalization. And the inputs to that model can be curated FAQs or just documents that allows us to apply deep learning models based on neural networks and transform the input of questions and answers into vectors. That particular model then gets outputted and made available to Fusion to use across the pipeline. And these models can be used at index time. Whenever we're actually indexing data, we can apply that intelligence on the question and answers that we would like to index, and then use it on the query side, where the same model is used to interpret the incoming query and then match it to the existing similar question and answers that were already indexed. And the way then it communicates with the search interface, whether it's a chatbot or a search UI, is through APIs, where the query comes in through the API, gets interpreted, the relevant answer gets picked up from the Fusion backend, and then serviced back to the search layer, which could be, again, a chatbot or a search UI. And in order to kind of exemplify this type of user experience, I would like to turn it over to Steve Amirov, my colleague, and he'll walk you through the demo scenario.
Thanks, Radu. So the demo you're about to see is centered around customer care, which is all about how well we're able to take care of our customers as they engage with our brand. And this is everything from product research and discovery to support, along with the renewal process of a particular product or service. So with the added intelligence from our deep learning models, allowing us to answer questions even when asked in a variety of different unanticipated ways, we can expand that customer experience and confidently introduce chatbots and virtual assistants that can handle natural language questions. So let's move on to the demo. And today we'll be looking at a fictitious company called DataBack. They specialize in backup and recovery solutions. And like many companies today, they were suffering from a poor search experience, overloaded call centers, and an inflexible legacy search application. So we re-platformed DataBack on Lucidworks Fusion and applied smart answers to their data. So let's see what a multi-channel customer experience looks like when powered by smart answers.
I'm going to move over to my desktop where I'll be screencasting my cell phone. So for this first demonstration, I'm going to take on the persona of an existing customer. Let's say that I'm troubleshooting an issue and I need a quick answer to a question. Hey Google, talk to DataBack.
Let's get the test version of DataBack. How may I help you?
What happens if the private analytics upload fails?
If the data upload fails, then the service will try to upload again after 60 minutes. Upload failures are reported in the dbd.log file.
And Smart Answers returned an accurate response back. Now let's say multiple users come along and they're looking for the same answer, but they ask the question in a variety of different ways. The upload isn't working for the analytics server.
If the data upload fails, then the service will try to upload again after 60 minutes.
And we'll try it with a different variation. What should I do if uploading to the analytics server is unsuccessful?
If the data upload fails, then the service will try to upload again after 60 minutes.
So as you can see, Smart Answers is actually capturing the semantic and contextual information of the different words and phrases that I'm using. So let's take a closer look at that, only this time we'll change a single word. Upload analytics server protected.
Security for your organization's private analytics reporting server is managed by the organization.
Now the word protected wasn't found anywhere inside of that answer, nor do we have any query rewriting or synonym replacement or synonym expansion happening in the background. So Smart Answers is actually able to encode that semantic similarity and automatically deliver the correct answer back to us. And this is due to Smart Answers' ability to encode text into deep vector representations, allowing us to have much greater synonym expansion without having to rely on things like stemming or uploading a large list ahead of time. Now, because Smart Answers is built on top of Fusion, we can take advantage of things like auto-tuning so that Fusion becomes smarter over time as more and more users interact with it. For example, a user might come along and ask, how can I speed up backups?
You can back up an entire instance more quickly by scheduling multiple child clients for simultaneous backup.
Now, this particular answer happens to be really great, but let's say, for example, that maybe it wasn't exactly what we're looking for, or it wasn't the most appropriate answer for this point in time. Our user can say, try again.
Schedule the DDB backup in such a way that it runs when there are fewer backups in progress as possible. This will ensure that the DDB backup will finish sooner. Was that better?
Perfect.
I'll let Fusion know you liked this answer the best.
Now, as a new user comes along and asks a similar question to that, they should receive that most recent response to their answer. How can I speed up backups?
Schedule the DDB backup in such a way that it runs when there are fewer backups in progress as possible. This will ensure that the DDB backup will finish sooner.
So let's continue down this journey, only this time I'm going to switch personas and I'm going to take on the persona of a future customer who might be wanting to do deeper level of research. And instead of a virtual assistant, I'm going to interface with a chatbot. So future prospective customer might ask, which feature releases do you support?
Feature releases, formerly service packs, are available in a 90-day cycle. We fully support customers on the 5 most recent feature releases.
Or perhaps instead of a future customer, maybe I'm an investor. I may ask a question along the lines of, does DataBack pay dividends?
No, DataBack currently does not issue cash dividends.
Now, those 2 questions I asked were pretty simple. Let's make them a little bit more complex and remove some of the keywords out of them. Is there an annual return if I invest in DataBack?
No, DataBack currently does not issue cash dividends.
So here's a great example really showcasing the power of smart answers. I didn't use any of the keywords. I replaced them really with annual, return, invest, and smart answers understood the context and that there is a semantic closeness between my question and the answer that we have indexed. So to have a Q&A system that feels natural and has a high rate of accuracy, you really do need a lot of intelligence all working together behind the scenes. And with smart answers, we take a layered approach to achieving this. For example, we can incorporate things like entity recognition, parts of speech tagging to identify nouns and verbs within a query. We can create these really simple yet highly effective enhancements that make a conversation feel much more natural. To illustrate this, I'm going to move over to another web application, and I'll start typing some questions in the search box. What's a data cell group? And what's different here is instead of receiving a frequently asked question, I can return a glossary definition that's coming from an entirely different data source. But because we can understand the type of question that was asked, we could boost the most appropriate answer even if it lives in a different data source. So let's change that into something different. Who can read data in a data cell location? And Smart Answers identified that this wasn't related to a glossary definition necessarily. It was more closely semantically similar to a frequently asked question. So let's tie all of these concepts together, and I'll show you what a really fluid conversational experience might look like for a particular line of questioning. And for this, we'll go back to our chatbot. What's a client computer group?
A logical grouping of client computers in which selected options can apply to all member clients.
Why would I ever need to use a client computer group?
Once created, client computer groups can be used to perform the following tasks for all their members. Create scheduled tasks. Set user security. View job history. Generate reports.
And who can tell me more about that?
Aliyah Abed will likely know. She specializes in networking, client computer groups, and virtual machines.
So what's interesting is that I asked 3 different questions. The first one was related to a glossary term, the second one an FAQ, but let's look at this third one. And I'm going to put it in the search box in this case. So in addition to those first 2 data sources, we could also index data from Active Directory and then apply that line of questioning to a different data source, in this case one we have called people, and then boost this one up as the first most relevant answer. The other thing you might notice is in this particular question that I asked, I didn't include anything related to networking or client computer groups, but because of that natural language processing ability within Fusion and us having the ease to take advantage of it, we could identify that this particular question didn't include a noun, it didn't include a topic or an entity. So in cases like that, we can create a really simple rule that says, if you don't see any of those aforementioned items, just look at the previous question and use the context of that previous line of questioning.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. Hi, everyone. As we near the end of the webinar, thanks to those of you for entering in your questions. For others, you still have the chance to enter them now, so be sure to take advantage of that. Before we get started with the Q&A, here are some resources to help you learn more about Smart Answers. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with us, shoot us a note at lucidworks.com/contact. Now I'll kick it over to Roddy for the first question that came in from the audience.
Thanks, Naomi. So I'll start with the first one, actually, and the question was, what NLP software do you use? I guess I can actually break this down into a couple of sections. The natural language processing capabilities and the search capabilities come from the Solar engine that we're using. The actual Smart Answers methodology is using Python. So what we have done is we are an open platform that allows us to embed models from other analytics frameworks, and the Smart Answers models were built with Python. And if the question also extends into what service we've used to do the voice-to-text integration, that's actually a Dialogflow integration with Google. We have a partnership with GCP and Lucidworks, so we've made the example based on that service. Let's see. A next question could be, what version of Fusion is Smart Answers available on? So our latest version of Fusion is Fusion 5. It's a cloud native architecture that we've actually refactored from our previous version. So it's very powerful, a lot more API friendly and distributed system that allows us to scale a lot better. So that's the version that we're actually releasing Smart Answers on, that's available to our customers. So I got another question here. What type of model is used? Word2Vec. Actually, this is a very interesting question. The model, when you have FAQs and you have question and answer pairs, we're using an RNN type model. However, part of the solution, we also have what we call a cold start. A cold start model allows us to use just documents as part of your knowledge base. So we take in the documents, and that's the instance in which we are using a Word2Vec just to get us started. But interestingly enough, and we have another question here around, does the system learn from itself? When you deploy a cold start type model that allows you to match vectors from the queries with the actual answers, with the actual documents, you're starting to select signals as people click through the documents of interest to them. And those signals, in essence, become question and answer pairs, which in turn we can turn around and use as a training sample on which we can use an RNN network and build an even more robust model. Let's see here, what other questions we have. How much data is needed to train a model? This is a very interesting one. We have seen, we've worked with multiple customers, and we've seen a sweet spot for training a model at around 2,000 Q&A pairs. It's not necessarily a hard rule. You can probably do with less. But we're also seeing the model in terms of sample size starting to potentially plateau around 10,000 samples as well. So the sweet spot is anywhere in between, maybe 1,500, 5,000, or a little bit more to actually get a very robust generalized model for question and answers. How do we turn articles into answers? This is the same concept that I mentioned earlier. Articles are basically documents, so we're using a word-to-vec approach to that cold start problem. Let's see, I'm actually scrolling through. How is the model used at index time? The model is basically used to apply the vectorization logic at index time. We have one index stage that allows you to add the vectors, the embeddings for the incoming documents or question and answer pairs. We control the output. How do we control the output such that you get just a glossary definition or an FAQ answer or I cannot see the rest of this one, but Stephen, can you actually talk us a little bit through the mechanics of differentiating between glossary, FAQ, etc.?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? I had a little bit of an audio issue there. Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, so the question is, how do you control the outputs that in the context of a glossary definition versus an FAQ?
Sure. So part of Fusion allows us to understand natural language processing in the sense that we could understand sentence structure and identify if a particular query, as seen as a question from the user, is if it appears more like a definition versus an FAQ. And we could use some simple logic to determine that. That might be what, for example, how many words are in that query. Is it starting with a what word? For just to name a few examples there. So we can incorporate some really lightweight conditional logic to determine which particular data sources we should boost.
Right. Perfect. Thank you. There's another question here for business users. Can they see the metrics to help with tuning? Absolutely. One of the outputs of the training jobs is an evaluation job that actually allows you to fine-tune the weights of the parameters, and also there's a very a powerful concept here that allows us to build weights between the question and answer modeling and the Solar scores as well. And that job and that output allows you to actually find the sweet spot between how much weight do you put on the keyword search and how much weight do you put on the actual Q&A score. Can you combine glossary FAQ responses with the traditional search results? I think that was answered just now earlier. So for Stephen's response and also mine earlier, there's a way to actually produce this type of weights and this type of logic to combine glossary and FAQ responses in your scoring, in your query pipeline. What are the tunable parameters and hyperparameters you expose in the users for your model? There's a full list of parameters. Actually, we parameterize quite heavily and given a lot of options for parameterization into the training module. And for that, actually, I can include a document link for all the options for parameter tuning and hyperparameter tuning in the notes of the webinar. Let's see here, a couple more. Here's an interesting one. What industry do you see having increased interest in conversational frameworks? We are actually seeing a massive interest from multiple industries, especially the ones that are actually establishing more heavy and more focused digital interfaces and websites. But we tend to see a lot of knowledge bases that are curated coming from financial services, government, healthcare, right? So these are companies that even internally have a lot of curated content and knowledge bases for HR, for IT, for governance, for policy, regulation, and so on and so forth. How can we start if we do not have documents to use for modeling? This one is another great question. The fact that Fusion is so flexible in the ability to embed models from other frameworks, Smart Answers also comes with 2 embedded models that we actually picked up from open source that are already trained. And these models, some of them, one of the models is multilingual. It was trained multilingual, supports over 16 languages. And then another English extended model, and that one was developed with data from Wikipedia, publishing databases, and so on and so forth. So it's a great way to actually get into question and answer systems without even having to curate your knowledge bases, documents, or if you have FAQs beforehand. Now, this approach, obviously, it is a cold start, and if you have more domain in your knowledge base, that will need to be trained. Looking for questions here. Confidence scores and the availability of confidence scores. Yes, we have precision and recall statistics that come with the logs from the training job. So all that information for a data scientist or even a business user will be available at training time. So that's kind of the bulk of the questions we're seeing here, and we will have a follow-up with a blog that actually will tag along the rest of the questions. With that, I would like to thank everybody for joining today. Naomi, Stephen, appreciate the conversation, and we look forward to talking to you guys in the field. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Rado and Stephen, for presenting today, and also thank you to everyone for joining. All of the content from today's webinar, just so you know, will be sent to you after the webinar. So please feel free to share the content with your colleagues. Again, if you'd like to get in touch with our team, you can send us a note at lucidworks.com/contact. Thanks again for joining, everyone, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.